Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Hallmarkies podcast. And today we have a bonus episode where we are putting on our listening faces and we are talking about the new romantic comedy Bros, which features Hallmark favorite Luke Macfarlane. This is going to be a lot of fun to talk about. This is definitely a mature movie. It is a hard R. So if that's not your jam, don't listen to this episode. There's lots of other stuff on Hallmarkies podcast that you can listen to. But we're going to have a fun time talking about it. And I'm film critic Rachel Wagner, and my friend Nathaniel from the Film Experience is here. And thank you so much, Nathaniel, for coming on the podcast.
Oh, I'm excited. I don't know much about Hallmark movies, but
Yes.
but I do love a rom-com like most people if they get a good one.
Yeah. So this is your first time coming on the show. Why don't you introduce yourself to our audience?
My name is Nathaniel Rogers. I am the owner and editor of the Film Experience, which is a long-running independent site that mostly focuses on Oscars, but we also do a lot of actress focused work and international cinema.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I first came in contact with you when you used to do that Hit Me With Best Shot
Yes.
series, and that was really fun. I really enjoyed because it was fun, even on a movie that you don't particularly like, to find your favorite shot.
Yep.
I famously am not a fan of Atonement. I don't like
Yeah.
that movie. So, but there's lots of pretty shots, so that was fun.
One of the interesting things about that series, which was like we watched it for the cinematography, and one of the interesting things is doing comedies because people don't really think of comedies as visual, but they are.
That's true. Yeah, that is true. People tend to just not take comedies in general seriously, especially romantic comedies.
Yeah.
So, yeah, let's talk a little bit about this movie, Bros. So, of course, it was written by Nicholas Stoller and Billy Eichner. And he said a bunch of times this is basically his passion project. And he got Luke Macfarlane on board for the love interest. And uh, it was interesting to see Luke Macfarlane in something because I'm so used to seeing him in these Hallmark movies. It was interesting to see him in definitely not a Hallmark movie.
Right.
Yeah. Uh, but this is produced by Judd Apatow. And so it's definitely, if you have seen Trainwreck, Forgetting Sarah Marshall, which was also written and directed by Nicholas Stoller, those movies, Bridesmaids, then you can get an idea for this kind of style of comedy.
Yeah, it's definitely has the Apatow, even though it's very much Billy Eichner's project, it definitely feels of that family of film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Would you say you're a fan of Judd Apatow's filmography
Um,
going into this?
Not necessarily. It's sort of like hit and miss for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really have any like direct opinions of the style of comedy. It just all depends on the actual film.
Yeah, I'd agree. I Some of them can be quite sweet, like the 40-Year-Old Virgin.
Hmm.
Um, I I didn't love Knocked Up. That one wasn't my favorite. It does some funny parts, I guess. Um, but and Bridesmaids is good. But was the one with Leslie Mann? The This Is 40. Ugh,
Oh yeah, that one
that
got a
one
critical drubbing.
that wasn't my favorite.
Yeah,
I didn't like that one. It was frustrating for me as a rom com fan because for a while those types of rom coms, the raunchy kind of more masculine and feeling rom coms, were the only ones that were coming out. That we were not getting uh, traditional rom-coms
yeah.
for a while, and it's been kind of nice this year as we've seen sort of a return of the rom-com, which to me makes a ton of sense because super cheap, and when they hit, they really hit. So I don't really understand why Hollywood has been so reticent to make rom-coms.
I think part of the problem is Hollywood let any mid-budget stuff go for so long
Hmm.
that people rushed in to fill the gap, and so streaming services or cable channels like Hallmark and streaming like Netflix, they took
Hmm.
ownership of an entire genre,
Yeah.
and so then people were so used to, oh, those are for watching at home.
That
When
that is true, especially about Christmas, because
Yeah.
the if you could watch a Christmas rom-com at home, why the only reason to have something in theaters is if it was like super raunchy, like Office Christmas Party, or if it was, maybe like a horror kind of element or something like that. That Yeah, you just watch it on Hallmark. And I mean, and that's partly what was so brilliant about what Hallmark did is, I mean, they saw this void in the marketplace,
Mhm.
and they made content for for that audience. And one of the things that, I mean, unfortunately, it doesn't look like this movie will open very strong, uh, which is disappointing. uh, but one of the things I thought was strange in the marketing, is that they seem to, and you see it in the movie as well, but they seem to have this idea that there are a lot of sweet gay rom-coms, and that like they're satirizing and coming up against that
Mhm.
when there's hardly been any. So
Yeah.
I thought that was a little bit strange. I mean, Hallmark is just having their first gay led Christmas rom-com this year. And
Yeah.
by this movie, you would think that they're just like super progressive and putting out all these like,
Yeah.
um, which they're not. And they've had gay characters in the last 2 years, but still not a
Uh-huh.
lead until this year. And Lifetime has had one
Mhm.
gay rom com, and they had, I think they've had one or two lesbian. Um, but I mean, most of these movies are female led, so that kind of makes sense. But they've only had a couple. There's been a couple on Netflix,
Mhm.
but I don't know,
But
just hardly any.
yeah.
So I thought that, especially the first teaser when they were like, not another sweet gay rom com or whatever, I was just kind of like, what are you talking about?
I mean, there have been indies here and there that try,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
they're few and far between, and usually are not crossovers to where anyone other than a gay audience would really know about them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's this studio called Telio that we've interviewed the director. I should have had her name ready. We've interviewed them and we've covered them on the podcast. But uh but yeah, there's just, you would think by this movie that there were that like Hallmark was getting super progressive in the way
Yeah.
that they kind of, and which is kind of funny. I said on Twitter that I think that if anything, Bros movie gives Hallmark too much credit, more than they deserve.
Yeah, I think what they're doing is they're oh, what do you call that when two characters or two real life people are conjoined into one in a fictional
Uh
sense? Anyway,
huh.
I forget the word. They're doing
Yeah.
that for that type of movie, but I what I sense is they're taking all of what Netflix has done and all of what Lifetime has done and what Hallmark has done and assuming that it's all one thing and everybody
Hmm.
knows it. You know?
Right. Yeah. That's fair. Yeah, I think that's true. Um, well, I guess overall, what did you think about this movie? Is about this podcaster who, they in this relationship that he has with Luke Macfarlane's character named Aaron, and they're kind of back and forth. Overall, what do you think of the movie?
I totally loved it.
Hmm.
So I was happy to discuss it on here. One of the things, one of my uh, issues I sometimes have with rom-coms, even though I don't have anything against the genre, is sometimes I think that they forget that they need to be both romantic and funny. And
Yes.
so sometimes what you end up with, at least from, the number I've seen, is something that's sort of halfway for both. Or it's like romantic but not really funny, or vice versa.
Hmm.
And so I think this one accomplished doing both, which is very important. And
Yeah.
I think they often forget, oh, it's supposed to be a comedy. Like if they're doing the romantic scenes, they're not funny,
Yeah.
or vice versa. And I think this
Ye-
had a nice balance throughout.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that the Lost City this year did a
Mhm.
pretty good job, I think, being funny,
Yes.
and also romantic. But like something like Marry Me, that wasn't funny.
Yeah.
No. I mean,
Yeah. A lot
I
of
didn't
times,
hate it, but
yeah, a lot
but
of
yeah.
times they're like basically dramas with a few chuckles, and then they call them
Mhm.
rom-coms because they're light, i.e., non-substantive.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
even
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 though
your even your I'm sorry, even your example with The Lost City is a good one because even though that is a rom-com, the bias people have against that genre, they don't really call it that. They call it like an action comedy.
yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's true. And a lot of even some of the classics of the genre, I would barely count as comedies, like Sleepless in Seattle. I think it's actually a movie about grief and loss.
Yeah.
Like it's barely a comedy. I mean, it has the scenes where they're talking about old movies, and there's a couple laughs. Rosie O'Donnell and David Hyde Pierce, they get some laughs, but it's not really. I think it makes me cry. I watched that
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
uh, but we do get You've Got Mail call out in this, which was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Comparing it to Grinder. I mean, I feel like sometimes people feel like the only way to do really good comedy with a rom com is to go the raunchy route. But I don't think that's necessarily true. And I mean, I'm fine with it for this. It works for what it is. But I would also like to see like more genuinely funny, even from Hallmark. I would like to see more genuinely funny rom coms that don't necessarily have to be like the hard R.
Yeah. I mean, I think classic Hollywood did a really good job of that.
Yeah.
But even those aren't generally referred to as rom-coms. People say screwball comedy, but
Mm-hmm.
almost all of them are romantic comedies.
Yeah, yeah. Something like Bring Up Baby or
Yeah.
Christmas in Connecticut or something like that.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
those ones are genuinely hilarious while also having a love story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we start out this movie with it being introduced to his podcast. It's called The 11th Brick of Stonewall. He says that he has 1 million subscribers. So that's pretty good. Pretty
Yes.
impressive. I do think that Hollywood, for the most part, completely fails in capturing a podcast. I don't know if you watched the Sex and the City reboot, and just
I
like
did.
that,
Yeah.
it's called.
Yeah.
That podcast was
That was
just, to me,
yeah,
that's
that
the epitome of like not getting like a podcast right at all. It was so bad. I thought.
yeah, that was a radio show essentially.
Yeah, it was a radio show and it was so cringe. Like nobody would want to listen to that show, in
Right.
my opinion. It was just not pleasant or funny or
Yeah, I
um
mean, most podcasts, at least, the ones I've been to are, people talking on Zoom or Zencast,
yeah,
where they're not really cinematic. There's not a huge team of people
yeah,
around.
exactly.
Hey, this is Jen Johans, host of the podcast Watch with Jen, which delivers a steady stream of great movie recommendations, thoughtful career deep dives, and first rate conversations with film critics, authors, actors, journalists, filmmakers, and more. You can find Watch with Jen wherever you get your podcasts or hear us first at our Patreon at patreon.com/filmintuition.
So we find out that he's been asked to write a rom com a straight guy would like. And one of the themes in the movie is that this whole love is love, that is BS, basically. And he says our relationships are different and not all gay people are nice. And what did you think about that, like throughout the movie, that kind of theme, him taking kind of shots at love is love?
I appreciated it in a way, because even though love is love,
Hmm.
it is true that the queer community is different on a number of levels, you know. Um, and it's true that there's at least more openness that relationships are not universal. Like, I'm sure this is true for straight couples as well. You know, one marriage is not the exact same as another marriage.
Right.
But I think in the gay community, there's a little more acknowledgement that that's true, that everybody has their own sort of system and their own type of relationship.
Hmm.
So in a way, I appreciated it, but it also weirdly feels like something where it thinks the audience is way ahead of where it is.
Mm,
Or the same thing that you're talking about with like spoofing like gay rom-coms like they're a dime a dozen.
yeah.
And I've even seen that reaction from, you know, queer audiences, um, who are, you know, before the movie came out, people seem to be enjoying it, but um, they, you know, people like, oh, you know, like yet another, you know, rom-com about two white gay men falling in love. And I'm like, yet another, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, I'm a white gay man and I've had just only a few of those in my entire life, you know?
Yeah, almost every one that I can think of has been some kind of like a Love Simon or something like that uh that's about coming that has a coming out
Yeah.
element to
Angle. Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Um even the Happiest Season had
Yeah.
that in series. And so there there just haven't been very many. And unfortunately with this not doing well, I hope that it doesn't mean uh we won't be getting more.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
I-
yeah, I mean, it was always going to be a risk because, listen,
yeah.
there's still homophobia,
Hmm.
and there's still the problem that rom-coms have of people are so used to them being a streaming and or TV thing.
Hmm. I think that one of the problems that you have in telling a gay rom com is that men tend to like statistically not be as interested in romantic comedies as women.
Right.
And so you kind of have to make this movie appeal in the marketing. And there's two women, and Hollywood is traditionally terrible at marketing to women, and and they don't. I mean, for so long, all the movies that we got were for boys between the ages of 17 and 23.
Mhm.
um, and so I think that may also be part of a disconnect, is that if they had found a way, because I think this movie could appeal to women. I mean, I'm a woman and I liked it. Uh,
Mhm.
and but I think that may be part of it too, is that how do you get guys to see this movie?
Yeah, I don't know if you saw that promotional thing that Billy Eichner was doing. He was reviving his old series, Billy on the Street, where he screams at people in New York. Um, Sometimes he has a celebrity with him, and he
Hmm.
had Paul Rudd, and they were walking around trying to get people to go see the movie. And it was quite funny, but they would approach groups of guys, and they would hear the title "Bros," and they'd be like, "Okay," but then they didn't realize it was gay. So then there was these like confrontations about that, where the guys would
Hmm.
suddenly their faces would change when they realized he was trying to get them to see a gay movie.
Hmm. Yeah. And it's a shame because I think in the marketing they could have shown more of the actual jokes. I mean, I guess you want to save some stuff, but they could have, I think that could have been appealing. Like the just jokes, like the Kristen Chenoweth joke was hilarious.
Hmm.
I think, and that she's got the rainbow dress and the Stonewall hat. That was hilarious, and I think they could have shown more. I also thought it was a very funny joke with the NFL player who now can be publicly hot, gay, and
Yeah,
gay.
right. Yeah, I mean, but there was a lot of the humor was super specific too. Like,
Hmm.
the as you know, because you've been a guest on my podcast, we have that episode hasn't come out yet, but
Hmm.
we do a lot of stuff about actresses, and there's this joke in the movie about a new dating service called Zellweger that's for men who just want to hook up and talk about actresses, which I laughed. I was laughing
That
so
was
hard
very
I was
funny.
having trouble breathing. But and like everybody, everybody I hang out with thought that joke was so funny, but I imagine a lot of people will be completely lost on them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Uh, yeah, and I mean he is pretty like pointed in certain points to the satirizing the gay community, like you said, or even
Mhm.
just saying things like that gay guys are the dumbest or smartest people in every room,
Yeah.
which I thought was was interesting. And just says she says straight people think we are smart. We're not smart. Um, and I guess one thing that I mean I didn't realize, I guess, is it seems like that is the in your experience is the gay community as like comfortable with polyamorous relationships as they are in this I mean I mean I'm from Utah, obviously, and so the gay community here is still more traditional, I
Yeah.
guess. Um, and so that was just interesting to me that like is everybody just like having threesomes all the time?
I would say no, but as I was saying earlier, it's still like the love is not love thing that the movie is joking about and has as sort of a running theme. It is true that there are more open relationships in the gay community that are at least publicly open
Hmm.
as to straight people. Like
Yeah.
I've only known a couple straight people in my life who admitted that they had relationships like that.
Mm.
Where
Uh,
it's fairly common to meet a gay man who claims they have an open relationship.
and I did think it was funny when he says to when Aaron says you look angry, and he's just like that's just the way I look. I look angry. So they have this kind of meet cute at the club,
Yeah.
and Aaron is kind of offended that that he says that the friend, I think his name's Harry or Henry, anyway, said that he was boring.
Oh yeah.
And he's basically portrayed in this movie. Luke Macfarlane is kind of portrayed as sort of a dumb lug kind of guy,
Yeah,
sweet.
like a himbo. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the one thing, I mean, we'll get to it, but I was a little bit surprised that they went on the whole testosterone plot.
Yeah.
Um, because I mean, I don't know. I would just not that Luke is his character, of course, but I feel like that. I don't know. I just feel like that might be awkward for him to, for that part to be worked in, and I don't know if it was really that funny.
Mm.
And the movie could be shorter, so I feel like that was a little bit strange. Uh, is 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 that just maybe something again that I'm not aware of about in the gay communities?
Well,
Testosterone all the time.
I mean, there's definitely like a subsection of,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've ever heard of circuit parties or, the circuit or whatever, but it's like
Mm-hmm.
for the muscle men and it's a very specific type
Yeah.
of experience. I've never had that, but I think it's becoming a more mainstream topic because there's been a lot of exposés recently on how Hollywood is completely obsessed with steroids and testosterone.
Mm.
And the fact that like all these movie stars now have these incredible bodies and they get them within like 3 months,
Yeah.
which is obviously they have help of drugs. So I
Mm-hmm.
didn't mind that it was in there, but that's a typical problem with Judd Apatow movies, though, is that they're always too long. They're always like
Yes.
jamming, like Knocked Out is a full half hour too long.
Yeah.
Knocked Out,
It's true. Yeah. And I guess they didn't really have a scene with them all getting high, which is usually that's usually part of an Apatow movie.
yeah. Maybe they figured the steroid use was enough.
Yeah, I guess it replaced it. Um, and in this meet cute, they kiss. Well, they have a near kiss, and then they actually kiss, which seemed kind of bold. To kiss on the first when you're just meeting. To me. Um, but I guess they're just very forward like that, and it's not like supposed to mean that much. I
Right?
guess.
Yeah.
And he says, no one is more emotionally unavailable than me. I really did appreciate that in one of these movies, you have somebody who's 40, never been in love, and he says, probably means I'm not the right person to write a rom-com. But yeah, I mean, I'm 41. I've never been in love, and you typically don't see that as a character trait in in movies, and so I
No,
thought
it's
that
true.
was nice.
It's true, and you also don't have characters like even the characters who are emotionally unavailable in these movies somehow have these relationships that they either have to leave to find happiness,
Yeah,
because they're with the wrong person or what have you.
yeah. A lot of times they're with these we call them bad men of business,
Yeah.
leading ladies. You're like, why are you with this person? Only cares about his job.
Yeah.
um, and yeah, we find out about Hallhart. And they say we're always on the cutting edge of Christmas, and so that's a repeated joke throughout the movie, and it's obviously also made extra funny by anybody who knows about Luke Macfarlane and the fact he's been in like 20 Christmas movies. And you had asked for the best of Luke Macfarlane Hallmark, and I gave you a couple of recommendations, and did you have a chance to look at either of those?
You know what I ended up doing? I was surprised. I guess people who are really into Hallmark, all of you and your listeners, hello everyone. Um, I guess people buy physical media because everything was so expensive. It was like if I want to rent a movie, which I do all the time, it's like $5 usually or
Yeah.
4. These are all like $8. And
Oh, yeah.
and if you subscribe to like the streaming service that has it, it's like a live television service. So you end up,
Mhm.
or at least from my understanding, you can only watch what's playing right then.
Well,
I
and
wasn't able
they
to see
have
that.
they have two different things. They have the live, like you're saying, and then they have Hallmark Movies Now, which is a curated service, but it's pretty limited in what they have. I don't know if they have either of the two that I gave you,
Well, what I
but
ended up doing was watching the trailers to all of
mm,
his Christmas movies,
oh, fun.
all of his Hallmark movies.
What'd you think?
I mean, it was fun because I just thought, I can see the appeal because it's all like formulas and subversions of formulas and
Yes.
seeing how which every genre has tropes and so it's kind of fun to see that and see how his character in Bros is sort of a variation on that with the being like a lawyer, which he's played business types like that a lot, probably because of his very conservative uh look,
Hmm.
and and then it reminded me of Brothers and Sisters too, because like early on in his career, because that's where I knew him from. And early on in his career, he that Brothers and Sisters was such a melodramatic and earnest show, and that's
Hmm.
sort of his acting style, which I can see why he was so appealing to Hallmark.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't seen Brothers and Sisters, but I heard that is a dramatic good show. But my favorite from Luke Macfarlane for Hallmark is one called The Birthday Wish, which is written by one of my favorite writers for Hallmark. Julie Sherman Wolfe is her name, and she's really good at banter, and
Hmm.
it's about a woman who is turning 30 at her birthday. She makes a wish, and she gets a glimpse. She goes to the eye doctor, and she gets a glimpse of what her life will be like in, I forget how many years it is, but coming up. And in this like vision, she sees her with Luke Macfarlane, who's a guy that she works with, and she's just like, "What?" And I thought that was such a clever idea, as opposed to a Family Man kind of idea where you're literally transported into into your future or an alternate life. This was just like a little glimpse, enough to kind of get her head going, and so I really think that one's very good and very clever. And then my favorite of his Christmas movies is The Mistletoe Promise, which has a fake relationship, which is always fun.
Yeah, I
And
watched the
why?
trailer to that one and I was giggling because it was like I'm like, this is the plot of Holiday. I don't know if you've seen Holiday on
Mhm.
Netflix, I think it was on. I'm like, it's the same plot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love fake relationship plot. I mean, you can say that about most Hallmark movies is their plots are very interchangeable, but that is also part of the comfort of watching them is you know exactly what you're going to get and you sit down and you get it. There's something nice about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I don't know if Hallmark is on the cutting edge of Christmas, but they're trying. They're trying. We this year we're getting a movie called it's called The Christmas Sitter, I think is what it's called, or The
Mhm.
Holiday Sitter, with Jonathan Bennett as our leading guy, and evidently he has to watch his like nieces and nephews or something, and he ends up getting some help from the hunky neighbor next door.
Okay.
So I'm on board.
Well, I will say this about I don't know about cutting edge, but I do think it's pretty wonderful that they gave Luke Macfarlane such steady work because he came out in 2008, I believe, and most of
Hmm.
his Hallmark stuff is after that.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I think so
they really
too.
kept his career like steady. And
Hmm.
anyone who knows any actors, no matter how well you do, or even if you're on a hit series like he was with Brothers and Sisters for 5 years, it doesn't mean that you're going to have a career the next year.
Yeah,
It's a really unsteady profession, and so you have to hand it to them because like Hollywood in general has been traditionally very averse to casting out actors in heterosexual roles, but he hasn't had that trouble.
yeah, that's true. That's true. And he's not the only one. There's others like Ali Liebert, um, Jimmy Jonathan Bennett has been out for
Yeah.
a while, and yeah, that is very true. Well, let's talk a little bit about these boardroom scenes that they have. So he is trying to make this LGBTQ museum happen in New York. It's surprising that something like this is there really nothing like this in New York.
Well, we have a gay and lesbian center,
I
but it's
would.
not really like a museum.
It's not a museum.
I mean,
Yeah, it
it's
seems like
kind of like
something.
there's a lot of meetings there and
Hmm.
events and things, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
They have like little tiny exhibits in little rooms, but that's about it.
Interesting. Well, what did you think overall of sort of these boardroom scenes?
Well, I
Do you
mean,
think
that
they were
was
funny?
the most obvious, like scripted. Like, how many jokes can we jam in about different letters in the you know LGBTQIA
Yeah.
community? Um, they weren't my favorite parts of the movie. I was much more into the rom-com parts.
Mm. I think they could have been tightened a little bit. There was definitely a lot of improv going on in these scenes,
Yeah.
and again, it's the movie was just a little too long. I think they could have been tightened a little bit, but I did have some definite laughs. I thought that Jim Rash as the bisexual kind of member of the board
Yeah,
was really funny.
he was. Yeah. His anger about it was really funny
Yeah,
because bisexuals tend to be very frustrated that people don't take them seriously.
yeah. Everybody forgets about the B and LGBTQ. He's like, we only get a week by Bisexual Awareness Week. Uh, and he says, Bobby says, it's a museum, not Schitt's Creek. And then one of the ladies says, "Oh, you look like Eugene Levy," and that made me laugh. I mean, everybody. It seems like everybody loves Schitt's Creek except for Bobby. Uh,
Yeah, but that's
and
part of Billy Eichner's whole persona is that he's also, very angry and excitable.
mhm, yeah. You also have a funny scene where you see Aaron at work and he's talking to this guy and the guy he's going to die, so he needs to get his will figured out and he wants to give his money to share.
Right? That was really funny and unexpected joke, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. She's got a big staff. She can use it.
I
Uh-huh.
really thought the movie was gonna do something with that as a subplot,
Mhm.
because the Bobby character is looking for funding for his museum.
Yeah. I guess the way that they kind of brought it in was when he talks to, the grape guy. So you know that he has the, experience,
Yes.
talking to rich people. I guess that's how they worked it in, but I kind of was expecting that too. I'm like, "Oh, this guy's gonna end up donating to the museum." Um, but, um, but yeah, they go on a date, and, he Aaron says that his favorite movie is The Hangover, and and he says that getting offended is Bobby's brand. Um, and he was just joking about The Hangover being his favorite movie, but that's when, Bobby says, you're a grown-up gay Boy Scout, and I'm whatever happens to Evan Hansen." That was funny.
Yeah, I mean, it had a lot. I did think it was really funny. I was laughing a lot.
Yeah, yeah. And they're kind of commenting on the fact that, that how Hollywood portrays gay characters, sort of the gay trauma,
Yeah.
and that you have to have a straight actor playing a gay character. And he says, "If they ever make a movie of my life, they better hire a straight actor. My life exists to get Benedict Cumberbatch an Oscar." Um, but I think that is true. I mean, we've been talking about it with rom-coms, like
Yeah.
the ones that have come out have mostly been kind of in steeped in coming out stories. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it'd be nice to also get cute little love stories.
Yeah. Yep. For a
And
long time, it was for a long time, gay movies they were either about coming out or they were about AIDS for a long, long time.
yeah, yeah,
And then they became mostly about coming out.
hmm
But they're usually dramas, when we get them.
hmm I loved his relationship with his sister. I thought that was very well done and sweet. Um, and his nephew's writing the report on Freddie Mercury, and he
Oh yeah.
reads it. He's like, "It's an improvement upon the film." It's good, but I don't know. I thought their relationship was nice.
Yeah, I mean, I loved so many things about this. It was overstuffed, as you said, and overlong, but even though that was a problem slightly, it did allow for lots of different types of jokes.
hmm Ho, ho, ho. We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies Patreon.
Do you love Hallmarkies podcast, especially at Christmas?
Do you enjoy the holiday previews, recaps, interviews, and bonus episodes?
If the answer is yes, please consider supporting the Hallmarkies Patreon. We need your help to do what we do both during the Christmas season and all year round.
But not only do you help a podcast led by strong, independent women by becoming a Patreon, you get to become a part of the Hallmarkies family.
Starting at only $2 a month as a patron, you will have access to our Facebook Patreon group where we talk about the movies, shows, and more all year.
We also have many monthly patron watch alongs with guests like Lacey Chabert, Natalie Hall, Paul Campbell, Mary Lou Henner, and more, giving their behind the scenes details of their films.
As a patron, you also have the chance to provide input into the podcast and even join us at different tiers.
So this Christmas season, spread some cheer to the Hallmarkies Patreon and become a member today. You won't regret it.
Go to patreon.com/hallmarkies to learn more.
That's patreon.com/Hallmarkies. So Aaron thinks the museum's depressing. He wants it to be Night at the Museum with Amy Schumer as Eleanor Roosevelt. And he doesn't know who Deborah Messing is, which seems unlikely. The show
Yeah.
was on for a long time. That you wouldn't at least know who she is.
Yeah.
But when they go to the movie date, they meet his friend Josh from growing up. Uh, and he's there with his fiance at the time. And then we find out that Josh later that he's come out. And so he becomes kind of a character within the story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then we get this scene with so Bobby and Aaron are, going kind of back and forth, and uh, sh- Bobby meets Deborah Messing. She's thinking of donating to the museum, and this whole sequence was very funny, I think. Where she's just like, I'm not Grace. I'm an actress. I even beat Sarah Jessica Parker at the Emmys. It's just like lesbians have their stuff together. So, what do you think of that? Did you think that was funny?
I thought it was hilarious
Yeah.
because I've always loved when celebrities do cameos of themselves and sort of poke fun at themselves at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really fun because she's like basically she's being like she's playing herself, but in a very non-nice version of herself, which made me laugh a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was very funny. She did a great job. And um so how do you feel about Billy Eichner and Luke Macfarlane as far as their chemistry? Do you think that they had good chemistry?
I do, but I weirdly, well, maybe not weirdly because he's done so many rom-coms, but I really attribute that to Luke Macfarlane
Mm-hmm.
because Billy's whole shtick is very sort of monologuing kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like from Billy on the Street to the way he is in this movie, like talking on his podcast and like discussing everything very loudly, basically speechifying. And so that's kind of I don't want to say narcissistic, but it's very one-sided type of delivery.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Luke McFarlane is very good at acting out relationship stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel like they are really different. And so it would be, I think, a somewhat volatile couple if it was to exist in real life. And so that's interesting. It was an interesting choice, I think, that they made.
Yeah.
Yeah. We find out that his dream in life is to become a chocolatier and to make chocolates, which was funny. And he says, "You're a Keebler elf with internalized homophobia." So
You used to take a lot of notes during movies because you were remembering all these lines so well.
well, I saw it twice. The
Okay.
second time, I had my notepad in hand. Um, so because it really is a movie that it's not like the plot is that great. So like it really exists on the jokes. Um, but they go to Provincetown, and they have this is where you see him getting the testosterone. You also hear Bobby singing in the shower. He does have a good voice.
He
I
does.
I
Yeah.
didn't know that Billy Eichner had such a good voice.
I didn't either, actually.
Mm, that was fun. And we basically find out that part of the reason that Bobby is the way he is because so many times in his life he was told that probably don't be like that. Don't do that. Don't be yourself. And so that's why he's particularly triggered later on when Aaron tells him to kind of tone it down. Hmm. And we get this whole scene with Larry Grape, who wants a gay trauma ride in the museum.
The great Bone Yang.
Yeah, that was really funny. And we also find out this idea about confidence, which I thought was interesting. That confidence is a choice. And Aaron says, "You're the most confident person I know." And he says, "Confidence is knowing you're the only one you can count on." So yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting for the character and kind of building these layers of why he is the way he is.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely ultra specific, which is good for movies. Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
make the characters feel real.
Yeah, these characters, both of them had a lot of layers.
Yeah.
Um, and so then we meet up with Josh again, and this is at a Christmas party, so we've zoomed up. They have this threesome thing, foursome. It was kind of funny, but but Bobby says that I want to be the cool guy, but I'm not. I didn't like it.
Mhm.
Hmm. And so And we also get the more Hull Heart Christmas. Uh, and I wrote, this movie seems to think Hallmark is more progressive than it is.
Right.
So let's talk about this whole scene with Aaron's parents, with his mom. So he asks Bobby to tone it down and to basically make things nice for his family. And I think it's not unreasonable for him to ask this. I mean, yes, he shouldn't not be who he is, but there's no reason why you have to be 100% on your first meeting with people, like
Hmm.
I feel like it's sort of saying, like, when you're on a first date with somebody, usually you don't like show 100% of your personality. You want to show all of your good sides, right? That's not you being a liar. That's you trying to get a second date, right? And I felt like Bobby needed to try to get a second date with Aaron's family a little bit more. And I don't think it's unreasonable that he asked them to just tone it down a little bit. I don't know. How do you feel? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I think one of the reasons that I liked the movie so much is in these situations, they are really complicated for gay people. Like
Mhm.
the gay trauma thing is a joke, right? The ride of gay trauma, but it is
Mhm.
true that it can be very triggering to hear tone it down because, gay people are always dinged if they're too flamboyant, or they're in situations like you said you're from Utah. I went to BYU, so I lived in Utah for years, and there was also a lot of that,
Mhm. Yeah.
after I came out of like people thinking, even though I wasn't, super, I didn't think I was super crazy, but if you're even a little bit like confident about being gay, it comes across as, why do you, it's like the very famous thing that gay people complain about that straight people are always saying is like, why do you feel the need to force it down our throats,
Mhm.
your lifestyle, which is not what people are doing. They're just trying to live their lives.
Yeah.
So in that way, that scene was really interesting because it was very easy to understand both sides of the fight.
Mhm.
Like, I agree that it's not unreasonable to ask someone to be a little calmer around people's parents. But at the same time, I can see why, because they do a good job of character building, why that really threw Bobby.
Yeah. Yeah. And in particular, the mom says, "Oh well, they're too young to learn about gay history," and she teaches second graders.
Yeah.
And I mean, the only thing that I guess I can maybe see a little bit of it is that usually you aren't talking about sex with second graders, any kind of sex. And so I think you'd have to find a way to talk about it. Um, and you could, it's not impossible, but that in a way that's appropriate for second graders.
Right. But see, that's the whole crux of the argument, right? Is that people always interpret, if you are teaching about queer history, that you have to be talking about sex. But when you're
Mm,
teaching history in
yeah.
general, you're always mentioning, things like if you talk about a president, you mention their first lady, right? That's not talking about their
Yeah.
sexual relationship.
That's true.
So I think that that's where some of the resistance comes in, because it's just a way of shutting gay people up.
Yeah.
Like, no, we can't talk about that because it's not appropriate for children, but we're not asking them to, teach kids about gay sex. Like, they don't need to know about sex in general
Yeah.
until they're a little earlier. And then, yes, they should. And this is another thing. They say, oh, they're too young to learn that. But the same people who say that are also, often fighting against any sex education.
Yeah, that's true. Well, and earlier, it's interesting that earlier when Bobby's with his sister, he's like, "Can we stop talking about that
Yeah.
around your kids?"
Right.
So even he, has boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think you're right. So Bobby ends up taking the steroid. Well, they have a big fight, and he says, "I'm not apologizing for myself." And then Aaron, because Aaron ends up kissing Josh, which was a stupid move. But they have a big fight, and they basically break up. And then Bobby gets the steroids, and that was kind of a funny scene, I thought.
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
everything, the roid rage. And then he's watching Hallmark movies, and he watches A Holly Polly Christmas, which that was very funny. uh, so yeah, and then sort of this last part basically is kind of your more standard rom-com in this last part.
Yeah.
Because they've broken up, they're miserable. I liked the conversation between uh, Aaron and his brother, who's going through a
Yeah.
divorce. I thought that was a nice moment between them.
Yeah.
When he's just like, "Do you love this stubborn little?" Is cute, and Aaron starts making the chocolates.
Yeah.
Harvey Milk Duds.
Yeah. Very funny.
Silence equals death triangle. And a tiramisu Susan. And of course, Bobby's like, of course, Aaron likes Friends. Because that's the thing with the relationships. Nobody likes all the same stuff that you like. So
Right.
every
Right.
relationship, you end up having to sit through stuff that you're like, why am I watching this?
Yeah.
um, so we get to the big moment where the grand opening for the museum, and and he sings the song "Love Is Not Love" song, and he sounds like freaking Garth Brooks. Like what? I always thought it was impressive.
I mean, I am not a crier in movies, and let me just tell you, I was audibly crying at that scene. I thought it was so beautiful.
Yeah, is really really sweet. And he says, "I just really love you," and then he says, "I love you too." And then he gets down on his knees and gets the giant ring from the old lady. And he says, "Will you date me for 3 months and then we'll reassess?" Which was funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which,
I
I
mean,
mean, I don't know if you saw Fire Island earlier this
mhm.
year on Hulu,
Yes.
but it's interesting that that had a similar sort of end to the main relationship, um,
Yeah.
where it's like, how far do you take like that these two people really like each other and they're going to give it a shot?
Mhm.
Um, how far do you take it without it being movie false?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel like for these characters, for them to like get engaged wouldn't have read right. It wouldn't have felt right. Uh, but uh, but I also do think for some people, the short relationships, when you know sometimes, and you just got to go for it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it just depends. But it was cute, and then we find out that they did the whole A Night at the Gay Museum thing,
Hmm.
which was funny, with Amy
Yeah.
Schumer,
Yeah.
Eleanor
That's a
Roosevelt.
very funny addendum. A little
Hmm.
stinger, I guess they call it.
Yeah, and we also find out that Aaron's mom came around and uh, took the kids to the museum and everything. So that was a sweet ending, and also that she's a 4 on the bi scale or whatever that is. She's like, okay. So there we go. That is the movie. Of course, there's even more that we can't talk about everything. There is a sweet scene where he, to everybody in the boardroom, he says, "You are my people," and they forgive him for freaking out on everybody. That was nice. And I did think it was funny when the one girl is posting it, and he's like, "This live apology's got 43K views." But there we go. That's the movie. I thought it was really funny. I think it has two pretty complex characters for a rom com. and they had good enough chemistry for me, and it was fun to see Luke Macfarlane in this role. So if you haven't seen it and you like funny, if somewhat raunchy comedies, and you're listening, I think you should give it a shot. And I think you'll enjoy it. So thanks so much, Nathaniel, for coming and talking about this movie with me. I really appreciate it.
It was really fun, but we didn't even discuss the incredible attractiveness of Luke Macfarlane.
Yes. I mean, he is one of my favorite Hallmark hunks. There's no question.
I mean, there was a point in the movie where I was just like, how can anybody be this perfect, to the point where his eyelashes are so long. I was like, how? He also has huge muscles, and then he has these like long, gorgeous lashes. I mean, he's incredibly beautiful.
Yeah. That's why I was kind of surprised that they went with the Royd's plot. I thought that was a little bit surprising for him and his character. But yeah, I mean, he's super super handsome and charming, got a great smile. I think
Yes.
that is one of his best attributes.
So you can see why I can easily see why he's appealing to the Hallmark community, in addition to being appealing to the gay community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I hope he gets a lot of work after this. But I hope I think he actually signed an exclusive contract with Hallmark. So I think we're at least going to get a couple more. Because I don't know if you know, but there's this the creator of one of the founders of modern Hallmark Channel got fired in 20 was it 2019 because of a big scandal. It was really frustrating, and I mean that he did what he did, not that they got fired. But anyway, he got fired, and so now he started this whole other network called GAC, and or I guess it's GA Family, and so like all of the stars are now like picking sides.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, some of them going over to GAF, and some of them staying with Hallmark, and anyway, Luke Macfarlane is one that's staying with Hallmark.
Yeah. Well, they've
So,
been good to him. They've been good
mhm.
to him. So
Yeah, yeah.
here's to loyalty, right?
Mm-hmm. So let us know if you're listening what you think of this movie. Did you like it? Did you think it was funny? We'd love to hear your thoughts. And Luke Macfarlane, if you are listening, we would love to talk to you. We've tried. So come on the podcast, please. We would love to talk to you. But thanks again, Nathaniel, for coming on. And where can people find you on social media and your site?
I am on Twitter at Nathaniel R, and my site is thefilmexperience.net. We also have a podcast, The Film Experience, which Rachel will soon be a guest on.
Yes, it was really fun. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. Check that out. Also, make sure you're following the podcast, Hallmarkies Podcast, all of our social media. And if you are listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. We really appreciate it. And if you are listening on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that so much. We also have our Patreon group and merch store. Check out that. And thanks so much, everybody. And we'll talk to y'all later. Bye.
Bye.